This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're examining something that divorce support groups won't tell you, relationship coaches avoid discussing, and that society actively suppresses because acknowledging it would complicate the strong, independent woman narrative that's been sold for the past 2 decades. Your ex-wife is walking directly into a psychological crisis she never saw coming. Not immediately, not in the first euphoric weeks, but inevitably, systematically, with a predictability that would be almost mathematical if human psychology weren't so messy. This isn't a revenge fantasy where she suddenly realizes her mistake and comes crawling back begging for forgiveness. This isn't wish fulfillment for men who are still angry. What I'm describing is something deeper, more complex, and frankly more tragic, the collision between expectation and reality that fundamentally rewires how someone understands themselves and their choices. Picture this moment that's happening right now across thousands of households. Men are sitting alone, scrolling through their ex's social media, seeing carefully staged photos of fresh starts and self-discovery journeys, inspirational quotes about strong women who don't need anyone, pictures of her looking happy at brunch with friends, posts about how she's never felt more free. And these men torture themselves thinking she's flourishing while they're barely surviving the wreckage of what used to be their life. But behind those curated images, behind those performative declarations of happiness, something entirely different is unfolding. She's heading toward a psychological reckoning so profound, so uncomfortable, that her mind will literally reshape itself just to survive the internal conflict. Today we're examining the psychological journey that women experience after leaving long-term marriages. Not the fantasy version presented in women's magazines or social media, but the reality documented in psychology research and observable in thousands of real cases. The initial euphoria and why it's chemically similar to a drug high. The collision with reality that shatters the narrative. The cognitive dissonance that literally alters brain chemistry. The phantom relationship syndrome that haunts her daily life. And the final reckoning when she realizes what she actually traded away. This is not wishful thinking. This is pattern recognition. And understanding this pattern doesn't mean you want her back or that you're waiting for vindication. It means you understand the full scope of what happened so you can move forward with clarity rather than confusion. Stay with me. This goes deeper than you think. The dismantling, what she's actually losing that she doesn't understand yet. Let me start by establishing what's actually happening psychologically when a woman exits a long-term marriage, because most people, including her, fundamentally misunderstand the scope of what's being dismantled. When she leaves, she's not just ending a relationship. She's not just moving out of a shared house or changing her legal status. She's demolishing an entire mental framework that structured her understanding of reality itself. Consider this carefully. Throughout your years together, you served as her baseline for everything. Every choice she made, what to eat for dinner, where to live, how to spend weekends, what career moves to pursue, what counted as a good day or a bad day, all of it was filtered through the lens of being partnered with you. Even during those conversations with her friends where she complained about your flaws, vented about what you weren't doing, listed all the ways you were failing her expectations, you were still at the center of her psychological world. The complaints themselves proved how central you were. You can't be disappointed by something that doesn't matter to you. She existed in a mental universe where you were the gravitational center, not because you demanded that position, not because she was weak or dependent, but because that's how long-term partnership works neurologically. Two people's lives become so intertwined that their sense of self becomes relational rather than individual. Now she's cut that gravitational tether, and she's trying to convince herself that floating untethered in space equals liberation rather than recognizing it as free fall. Phase 1, the euphoria, weeks 1 to 12. Why she seems so happy. This initial phase typically lasts anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on how long she spent preparing for the exit emotionally before actually leaving. She's riding an intense high, not metaphorically, but biochemically. Her brain is flooding with dopamine and adrenaline the same way it would if she'd started a new intense romantic relationship or made a major life change. This is the fresh start high, and it's genuinely intoxicating. Every morning she wakes up and mentally congratulates herself for being so brave, so bold, so willing to bet on herself. She left. She actually did it. She chose herself. The cultural narrative has told her for years that leaving is the hardest, most courageous thing a woman can do, and she's doing it. She's busy with logistics that create the illusion of forward momentum, finding a new place or reorganizing the existing one, buying new furniture or rearranging everything to erase your presence, setting up new routines, maybe signing up for that yoga class or book club she mentioned for years but never joined, perhaps creating dating profiles, just to see what's out there. Her social circle pumps her full of validation. Every friend who is secretly jealous of her stability, every single friend who wants company in the dating wasteland, every divorced friend who needs validation for her own choices, all of them are telling her exactly what she wants to hear. You're glowing. You look 10 years younger. You deserve so much better. I always knew you were too good for him. Your next chapter is going to be amazing. And she absorbs every word like oxygen. She genuinely believes she's living in a new and better reality. But here's what's actually happening. She's not living in a new reality. She's living in a narrative she's constructed about reality. She's the protagonist in a story she's telling herself about a brave woman who escaped mediocrity and is now free to pursue unlimited potential. Her phone lights up constantly with notifications, matches on dating apps, messages from men, attention she hasn't received in years, or thinks she hasn't received because she stopped noticing your attention somewhere along the way. She interprets this surge of male attention as confirmation that she made the right choice. Look how many men want her. Look how desirable she is. Look at all these options she has. What she's missing, what her dopamine-flooded brain cannot process yet, is that she's confusing volume with substance, attention with genuine interest, and novelty with actual value. Every man on a dating app swipes right on dozens of women. Every message is copy-pasted. Every "you're beautiful" is said to 10 other women the same day. The attention is real. The interest behind it is not, but she can't see that yet. The euphoria prevents clear assessment. The first crack when reality intrudes, month 2 to 4. The first fracture in her narrative usually happens around a specific moment. Not gradually, not through accumulated evidence, but through a sudden, jarring collision with reality that her narrative hasn't prepared her for. Often it happens on a date. Her first real date post-separation. The guy looks perfect on paper. Attractive photos, good job, says all the right things in messages. They meet for dinner or drinks. The evening flows smoothly enough. He's charming. He laughs at her jokes. He asks questions. Then the evening ends and he makes his move. And suddenly something happens that feels like cold water down her spine. This man doesn't actually know her. He doesn't know that she has an irrational fear of highway driving at night. He doesn't know that she needs exactly 2 pillows arranged in a specific way or she can't sleep. He doesn't know that she cries at certain songs for reasons she's never fully explained. He doesn't know that she checks that the stove is off 3 times before leaving the house. To him, she's entertainment for a Friday night, a body, a potential hookup. At best, an option among several he's currently exploring. And the contrast between this stranger's shallow interest and the deep familiarity you represented hits her like a physical blow. But acknowledging this comparison would mean admitting uncertainty about her choice. And psychologically, she cannot afford uncertainty right now. She's invested too much in the narrative of her brave escape. Her entire social circle has rallied around that narrative. Questioning it now would be devastating. So she pushes harder, more dates, more apps, more girls' nights out where everyone performs happiness for each other, more posts about living her best life. Except something has shifted. The attention feels less intoxicating now. Compliments from strangers ring hollow. She's starting to notice patterns in these men that weren't visible during the euphoria phase. How quickly they push for physical intimacy, how they talk about their ex-wives with contempt, how they treat waitstaff, how their eyes wander to other women even during the date, how little genuine curiosity they show about her beyond surface-level attraction, and without conscious awareness, she begins comparing them to you. Not deliberately, not consciously. She's still maintaining publicly and to herself that you were the problem, that leaving was necessary, that she made the right choice. But her subconscious does what brains naturally do: pattern recognition, comparison, threat assessment. The charming one dominates every conversation and never asks about her day. The successful one is emotionally unavailable in ways that make you seem emotionally present by comparison. The adventurous one is actually just irresponsible. No steady job, drinks too much, lives in chaos. With each comparison, you improve retrospectively in her mind, not because you were perfect, but because you were known, you were safe, you were home. Phase 2, the grinding reality, month 4 to 8. When novelty evaporates usually around months 4 through 8, the novelty evaporates completely. The dopamine high that sustained the euphoria burns out the way all highs eventually do. Her friends are getting tired of her dating stories. Initially, they were supportive, fascinated even, but now it's repetitive. Another disappointing date, another guy who seemed great but turned out to be terrible. Another complaint about the dating scene. They start changing the subject. The kids, if you have them, are acting out. Their entire world was disrupted and she's been too focused on her own self-discovery journey to notice how much they're struggling. Their grades might be slipping, their behavior might be worsening. They're asking when dad is coming back or why mom is out so much. She's exhausted, not physically tired, though that's part of it. She's exhausted from performing happiness, because that's what it's become, a performance. Every living my best life post requires more energy to create than the last one. Each public smile feels heavier. She's an actress who's forgotten her motivation but has to keep performing because the alternative is admitting the show was a mistake. The social validation that sustained her has dried up. Friends have stopped commenting as enthusiastically on her posts. The matches on dating apps have slowed. The attention from men has revealed itself to be shallow and often predatory. And she's starting to have thoughts she cannot share with anyone. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I was too hasty. Maybe things weren't as bad as I convinced myself they were. But she cannot voice these thoughts. Not to her friends who championed her departure. Not to her family who supported her decision. Not to herself, because that would mean confronting the possibility that she destroyed her life for nothing. So the thoughts stay buried. And they grow. The panic response when she realizes what she's lost, months 6 to 10, panic manifests differently in different women, but the underlying cause is the same, the dawning realization that what she thought she was escaping wasn't actually the problem. Some women go into hyperdrive. They pursue validation manically, more dates, more apps, more social activities, more anything to avoid stillness because stillness means facing what she's actually feeling. Others withdraw entirely, weekends in bed, scrolling through old photos, analyzing where things went wrong, obsessively replaying conversations and events trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything derailed. But regardless of the specific response, they share one commonality. Historical revision begins. That terrible marriage? Maybe it wasn't so terrible. Sure, there were problems. Every relationship has problems. But were they really as insurmountable as she'd convinced herself? Or had she catastrophized normal relationship difficulties into deal breakers? You, the man she couldn't tolerate being around? Maybe she was too critical. Maybe she focused too much on what you weren't doing instead of what you were doing. Maybe her expectations were unrealistic. Maybe she was comparing you to a fantasy rather than to actual men. That future she felt so certain about, the better life waiting for her if she just had the courage to leave? Maybe she miscalculated. Maybe she overestimated what was available to her. Maybe she underestimated what she had. Here's where the psychology gets fascinating and painful. She cannot simply admit she made a mistake. That would shatter her entire self-concept. She's invested months, possibly years if you count the time she spent emotionally preparing for the exit before actually leaving, building an identity around being brave enough to leave. Her entire social narrative rests on this foundation. Her friends know her as the strong woman who chose herself. Her family knows her as the person who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. Her social media presence is built on the story of a woman who left and is thriving. Admitting error would mean all of that was a lie. It would mean facing the judgment of everyone who supported her decision. It would mean acknowledging that all the pain she caused to you, to the kids, to herself, was unnecessary. Psychologically, this is unbearable. So instead, she creates a new narrative. Perhaps you've changed. Perhaps you've grown. Perhaps you've become the man she always wanted you to be. Perhaps under different circumstances, with both of you having learned and evolved, it could work. This allows her to entertain the possibility of reconciliation without admitting she was wrong about leaving in the first place. She's not admitting error. She's just acknowledging that circumstances have changed and maybe what didn't work then could work now. It's psychological self-preservation disguised as wisdom. The dating wasteland, what she's actually discovering out there. Let's be brutally honest about what her new dating landscape actually looks like, because the gap between expectation and reality here is where much of her psychological unraveling occurs. The dating pool for divorced women, especially those over 35, especially those with children, doesn't resemble romantic comedies or even the optimistic narratives pushed by dating app marketing. Men showing interest in her fall into distressingly predictable categories. Category 1, the players. Men who specifically target divorced women because they view them as vulnerable, eager for validation, and less likely to have high standards after relationship failure. These men are charming, experienced, and will tell her everything she wants to hear right up until they get what they want and disappear. Category 2, the married men. Men seeking affairs who conveniently omit their wives until several dates in. By the time she discovers the truth, she's already invested emotionally, and he's already gotten what he wanted. Category 3, the perpetually single. Men who are single for very good, very discoverable reasons. Emotional unavailability, substance issues, financial disaster, personality disorders, but who hide these issues well enough initially that she doesn't see them until she's already involved. Category 4, the decent but unavailable. Yes, some genuinely quality men exist in the dating pool, but they're either unavailable emotionally, recently divorced themselves, not ready for anything serious, or they have abundant options and she's competing with younger, childless women who carry less baggage. Here's the terrifying realization that hits her around month 6 to 8. Her perceived market value doesn't match reality. Those hundreds of matches on dating apps, those men swipe right on everyone. It's a numbers game and she's not special. She's just female and available. Those compliments about her beauty, copy-pasted to dozens of women. She can literally search the exact phrases and find them on forums where men share. Openers that work, that chemistry she felt on that one good date. He has 3 other women he's seeing who he has chemistry with. She's option B or C, not the priority. The harsh economics of post-divorce dating hit like a professional boxer. She's not special. She's not unique. She's another profile among thousands. And the men who are actually relationship quality are choosing women who don't come with the complications she brings. The 1-year mark, when the narrative collapses completely around the 1-year mark, though stubborn or particularly self-deceptive women take longer, the psychological defense systems fail catastrophically. The narrative she's been maintaining crumbles, and what's underneath is devastating. Loneliness crushes her. Not the, I wish someone were here to watch this show with me, loneliness, existential loneliness, the kind where you realize you've demolished your entire life for a mirage and now you're standing in the rubble alone. She's sitting alone one evening, perhaps after another disappointing date where the guy pushed for sex before even knowing her last name, or after another weekend where the kids were with you and she had nothing but empty hours to fill, and everything hits simultaneously, the magnitude of what she's done, the irreversibility of it, the fact that she traded something flawed but real for something perfect but imaginary. This realization is so psychologically heavy that some women's brains shut down emotional processing entirely just to survive it. It's not depression exactly, though that often develops. It's more like psychological anesthesia, the mind protecting itself from pain it cannot process. That's when the late-night texts start arriving. Between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., when her defenses are lowest and loneliness is highest, they start casually, "Hey, how have you been? I was thinking about that time the kids mentioned something funny you said, and it made me remember. I hope you're doing well." But what she's really communicating is, "I'm drowning, and you're the only life raft I remember. I destroyed us, and now I'm realizing what I destroyed. I can't say this directly because that would require admitting I was wrong, but I'm hoping you'll read between the lines and offer me a way back." The cognitive dissonance, how her brain physically changes during all of this. Her brain is experiencing cognitive dissonance at levels that literally alter neural pathways. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological stress of holding 2 contradictory beliefs simultaneously. And she's living with aversion so severe, it's measurably impacting her mental health. She must reconcile incompatible truths daily. I made the right choice leaving, and I'm miserable, and everything has gotten worse. He was the problem, and these other men are worse in every measurable way. I deserve better, and better doesn't seem to actually exist. I'm independent and strong, and I've never felt more dependent and weak. Maintaining these contradictions creates psychological stress that affects sleep, appetite, concentration, emotional regulation. Some women develop anxiety disorders. Others slide into clinical depression. Many develop emotional numbing because feeling too deeply would mean confronting truths they cannot face. The universe adds insult to injury with its timing, right when she reaches peak regret and is finally willing to acknowledge, at least to herself, that she may have made a catastrophic error. You're probably beginning to heal. You've processed your phases: shock, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Men typically handle relationship dissolution differently than women. We internalize, we rebuild, we focus on action over emotion. So when she's realizing what she lost, you've already started becoming someone new, someone improved, someone who learned from both the marriage and the divorce, someone who, ironically, might actually be closer to the man she always claimed she wanted. This creates a special kind of psychological torture for her. She is witnessing the version of you she claimed to want, but it's too late. You achieved growth and improvement without her, because of losing her, not despite losing her. The knowledge that she catalyzed your positive transformation but won't benefit from it, that she'll watch from the sidelines as another woman enjoys the improved version of you, is a special hell that haunts her. The social collapse, when her support system reveals itself. Women's friendships around divorce follow a fascinating and predictable psychological pattern. Initially, friends rally around her, they cheerlead, they insist she deserves better. They help construct and reinforce the narrative that leaving was brave and necessary. They attend her pity parties and validate every complaint. But as months pass, the dynamics shift in ways she didn't anticipate. Her married friends begin distancing themselves. Not overtly, not consciously, but instinctively, because she's now a threat. She's a reminder that marriages end, that the stability they have isn't guaranteed, that discontent can lead to dissolution. Her presence makes them uncomfortable. Additionally, she's now a single woman, and married women's protective instincts kick in. She might attract their husband's attention. She might get invited to events where she'd be around their spouses without them. The friendship that seems solid reveals itself to be conditional on her being safely partnered. Couple dinner invitations evaporate. Group chats continue without her. Weekend plans happen, and she's not included. The social life she thought she'd maintain or expand through divorce actually contracts dramatically. Her single friends, the tribe she assumed would become her new support system, reveal themselves to be competition. Everyone's fishing in the same limited pool of available men. Friendship becomes secondary to survival. And she's at a disadvantage because she's not truly single like them. She carries baggage, divorce history, possibly children. She occupies a different category and everyone recognizes it even if nobody says it. Her social world, which divorce was supposed to expand and improve, actually contracts into isolation. She has fewer genuine connections than she did when married. The support system she relied upon reveals itself as conditional and superficial. And she realizes something terrifying. You weren't just her husband. You were her best friend, her emergency contact, her automatic +1, her safe haven. And she discarded it all for what? For a fantasy that something better was waiting. Phantom relationship syndrome, the neurological haunting. Here's an unspoken psychological reality that women in long divorces experience but rarely discuss: phantom relationship syndrome. Similar to how amputees experience phantom limb pain, feeling sensation in limbs that no longer exist, divorced women experience phantom relationships. The neurological patterns built over years don't vanish just because the relationship ended. She catches herself turning to tell you something funny, then remembering you're not there. She hears your voice in her head throughout the day. Not hallucinations, but memory patterns so deep they're automatic. He would have found this hilarious. He would know how to fix this. He always knew what to say when I felt like this. She wakes up some mornings momentarily forgetting you're gone, then has to relive the loss again. That split second of normalcy followed by the crash of remembering. It's a tiny grief repeated endlessly. This isn't necessarily love. It's neurological. Her brain spent years, possibly decades, wiring itself around your presence. Those neural pathways don't vanish because she signed papers. They fade slowly, painfully, leaving traces that never fully disappear. The universe conspires with cruelty. That song you both loved plays on the radio and she has to pull over because she's crying too hard to drive. She discovers one of your old shirts mixed in with her laundry and spends 20 minutes holding it. The kids say something in exactly your inflection, and it takes her breath away. She visits that restaurant where you had your first date and realizes the food tastes different when you're eating alone. Not worse, just different, in a way that makes the memory more painful. These aren't just memories. They're psychological anchors constantly pulling her back toward the reality she's trying to escape. The mathematics of regret, when she does the actual numbers. Let's discuss something most divorce coaches and women's empowerment content carefully avoids: the actual statistical reality of her situation. If she's 35 plus, divorced, possibly with children from a previous marriage, and seeking a serious committed relationship with a quality man who is also single and available, emotionally healthy and ready for commitment, financially stable, physically attracted to her specifically, willing to accept and embrace another man's children as part of the package, meeting her standards in terms of values, lifestyle, compatibility, statistical probability is brutal. Now add in her specific preferences: height requirements, income requirements, education level, personality type, shared interests, and you're looking at odds that make lottery tickets seem like reasonable investments. But she can't acknowledge this reality, not to others, especially not to herself. So she creates coping mechanisms that slowly erode her self-esteem. She lowers standards while calling it being open-minded. She accepts treatment she never would have tolerated from you, framing it as going with the flow. She tolerates disrespect and calls it, not sweating the small stuff. Each compromise chips away at who she is. But the alternative, admitting catastrophic error, is psychologically unbearable. Some women enter obsessive self-improvement mode. Not healthy growth. Desperate transformation, new hair color, aggressive diet, gym obsession, new wardrobe, even attempting personality changes. They're trying to become someone else who might succeed better in this new reality. But it's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The problem isn't her appearance or behavior. The problem is fundamental miscalculation about what was available versus what she had. The rebound disasters, when desperation overrides judgment, the truly tragic cases involve rushed rebound relationships. She meets someone, anyone showing genuine interest, and immediately attempts to recreate what she had with you. Not consciously, not deliberately, but neurologically, she's trying to fill the void with someone who fits roughly the same shape. She introduces the kids too quickly because she wants to prove to herself and to you and to everyone watching that she's moved on successfully and found something better. She pushes for commitment before establishing real trust or compatibility because being in a relationship, any relationship, feels better than facing the reality of being alone. She ignores red flags that would have been deal breakers before because problematic company beats crushing loneliness. These relationships inevitably explode, usually spectacularly. The man reveals himself to be exactly who the red flags indicated, or the relationship moves too fast and collapses under its own weight, or the kids rebel against the forced blended family. And when it ends, she's more damaged than before. Another failure, another loss. More evidence that maybe the problem isn't finding the right person. Maybe the problem is that she destroyed the right situation. The 2-year decision, admission, or entrenchment around the 2-year mark, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, depending on how stubborn or self-aware she is, she faces a critical decision. Option 1, admit truth and attempt to make amends. Possibly pursue reconciliation if you're still available. Acknowledge error and begin genuine healing. Option 2, double down on a lie and reshape her entire personality around defending her choice. Most choose the second option, because it's easier psychologically even though it's more destructive long term. They become bitter, cynical about relationships, contemptuous of marriage. They join online communities of divorced women who reinforce each other's narratives about how men are terrible and divorce was liberation. They become women who tell other unhappy wives to leave, not because it's genuinely right for those women, but because misery craves company and they need validation for their own choices. If enough women made the same choice they did, then the choice must be right, right? Those who choose honesty, the minority, face different challenges. How do you approach someone you hurt so deeply? How do you admit error when you've built an entire identity around being right? How do you request forgiveness when you're uncertain you deserve it? How do you explain that you destroyed something good because you were chasing something that turned out to not exist? The psychological weight is crushing, and many women who want to admit truth simply cannot find the words or the courage. The identity crisis. At cellular level, who am I without us? There's another layer to this psychological unraveling that deserves examination: what happens to her identity at a cellular neurological level. When you're married for years, especially for a decade or more, your identity isn't just you anymore. It's you as part of us. Every decision she made, from what to cook for dinner to what career path to pursue, was filtered through the lens of being partnered. Her neural pathways literally formed around this relational identity. Her brain didn't just think, what do I want? It thought, what do we need? How will this affect us? What's best for our family? When she leaves, she's not just losing you. She's losing the version of herself that existed in relation to you. And that creates an identity crisis that psychology textbooks don't adequately address. Consider the small things she never had to consciously decide before. Which side of the bed to sleep on when the whole bed is empty and neither side feels right? What to watch on TV when there's nobody to compromise with? Where to eat when every restaurant reminds her of dining with you? These seem trivial, but they're death by 1,000 cuts to her psyche. Every tiny decision reminds her she's navigating life without the CO pilot she fired. The financial reality check. Independence versus poverty. Around month 9 to 12, the financial reality fully materializes. Divorce is expensive. Single life is expensive. That dual income that provided comfort and security, gone. Now she's trying to maintain the same lifestyle on half the resources or less. But it transcends just money. It's about what financial security represents: the ability to plan for the future, the capacity to handle emergencies, the freedom to make choices based on preference rather than necessity. She traded financial partnership for financial independence. But independence without sufficient resources isn't freedom. It's just decorated poverty. She's making choices she never had to make when you were managing finances together. Can I afford to keep the house, or do I need to downsize? Can I afford the kids' activities, or do some have to be cut? Can I afford basic maintenance on the car, or do I need to risk driving it until something breaks? Each financial stress adds to the psychological burden of recognizing that the independence she thought she wanted has a price tag she didn't anticipate. The touch deficit, the physical need nobody discusses. Here's something nobody prepared her for: physical touch deprivation. Not sex, though that's part of it. I'm talking about the 1,000 small touches that happen in a marriage without conscious thought. The hand on her lower back when you'd pass in the kitchen. Feet touching under the covers, the automatic hug after difficult days, holding hands in the car. The comfort of physical presence. Touch is a fundamental human need as real as hunger or thirst. Research shows that lack of physical touch increases stress hormones, disrupts sleep, weakens immune function, contributes to depression and anxiety. Suddenly she might go days, even weeks, without meaningful human contact. Her body rebels in ways she doesn't understand. Sleep becomes difficult. She gets sick more often. She feels constantly on edge. She's literally becoming ill from skin hunger. But she can't admit it, because that would mean admitting she needs what she rejected. Performance exhaustion, when the mask becomes too heavy. Some women develop what I call performance exhaustion. They've performed happiness for so long, on social media, to friends, to family, to themselves, that they've forgotten what genuine emotion feels like. Their smiles become reflexive rather than reflective. Their laughter sounds hollow even to their own ears. They post about living their best life while crying in the car after dropping kids at school. The gap between public persona and private reality becomes so vast they feel like they're living double lives. Maintaining that double life is exhausting. It's like being an undercover agent in your own existence, constantly monitoring what you say, what you post, what face you show the world, and eventually the performance becomes unsustainable. The mask cracks, and what's underneath is the regret and pain she's been hiding from everyone, including herself. The final torture, watching you be happy. Then comes the moment. It always comes when she sees you happy. Maybe it's a social media photo where you're genuinely smiling in a way you haven't smiled in years. Maybe it's running into you somewhere and seeing that you've lost weight, you're taking care of yourself, you have a lightness about you. Maybe the kids mention fun they had with you. Or worse, maybe they mention your new girlfriend and how nice she is. In that moment, something breaks inside her that can never fully repair. Because your happiness proves something she cannot psychologically afford to acknowledge. The problem wasn't the marriage. The problem was her perception of the marriage. You're capable of happiness. You're capable of love. You're capable of being the man another woman appreciates and desires. Which means you always were capable. She just couldn't see it. Or worse, she saw it but convinced herself it wasn't enough. This is the final psychological blow, realizing she didn't leave a bad relationship. She left a relationship she made bad in her own mind through unrealistic expectations, constant criticism, and focus on what was missing rather than what was present. And now she must live with that knowledge forever. Watching from the sidelines as you build the happy life she convinced herself was impossible, just with someone else who appreciated what she couldn't. The terrible recognition. It was never about you. Many of these women eventually arrive at the most painful recognition of all. The marriage problems weren't entirely about you. They weren't even mostly about you. They were about her internal dissatisfaction that she projected onto the relationship. The restlessness, the feeling that something was missing. The sense that life should be more exciting, more passionate, more fulfilling. Those were internal issues that leaving didn't solve. Actually, leaving made them worse because now she faces them alone. Without the stability, partnership, and support you provided, she discovers that she was running from herself, not from you, and you can't escape yourself. The dissatisfaction follows her into every new situation because its source was always internal. Final thoughts. What actually happens to her so? What actually happens to your ex-wife after divorce? She gets exactly what she asked for: freedom, independence, the chance to start fresh, the opportunity to pursue the life she convinced herself was waiting if she just had the courage to leave. And she discovers that what she asked for and what she actually wanted were completely different things. She wanted to feel alive but feels dead inside. She wanted excitement but got chaos. She wanted to be desired but became disposable. She wanted better but got different, and different isn't automatically better. She's walking headfirst into a mental battle she never saw coming. The battle between the narrative she constructed, brave woman who chose herself and is flourishing, and reality, isolated woman who destroyed stability for a fantasy that never existed. That battle will reshape how she sees herself, her choices, and the life she could have had. Some women eventually find peace with their decision, usually by doubling down on the narrative so completely that they can no longer see reality clearly. Most live in a kind of psychological purgatory, unable to fully move forward, unable to go back, trapped in regret they can't admit and pain they can't escape. And the truly tragic ones realize the full scope of what they destroyed only after it's irreversibly gone. Understanding this isn't about hoping she suffers, it's about understanding the full reality of what happened so you can move forward with clarity. She made choices. Those choices have consequences. Her psychological unraveling is a consequence she didn't anticipate. Your job isn't to rescue her from consequences. Your job is to build your own life. A life so good that whether she realizes her error becomes completely irrelevant to your happiness. Drop a comment if this resonates. Have you seen this pattern play out? Are you watching it happen right now? Subscribe because this channel will continue examining the psychological realities of modern relationships that nobody else is willing to discuss honestly. Stay clear, stay focused on your own healing, and never let anyone convince you that understanding what she's experiencing means you should accept responsibility for fixing it.